Dave Zimmerman here, chop wood, carry water. And today I want to go over some of the forms with you. And in the list that I'm making, we're going to call this forms 6, 7, and 8. Sometimes you see these forms broken down a little bit differently. But this would be our repulse monkey, or sometimes it's just called step back twirl arms. And then our grasping the sparrow's tail to the left and our grasping the sparrow's tail to the right. Before we get to these forms, number one, hopefully at this point you've done some warm-up, you've maybe done some fundamentals. If you haven't, you might want to go to reference those videos and get yourself warmed up here, get yourself ready to go. But I also want to introduce a concept to you, a Tai Chi concept, sometimes called soft eyes. And the idea of soft eyes, you can see me, I'm outside today. I kind of picked outside on purpose. It's a gorgeous day out. Great day to come out and interact with the elements outdoors. But also outdoors is a great place to practice this concept of soft eyes. And you can kind of maybe even notice me continually kind of looking off above the horizon line as I say soft eyes. And the ideal way that we want to practice the soft eyes is to look out above the horizon line and basically look off into the distance. And if you notice when you do that, that opens up our peripheral vision quite a bit. If that's challenging for you, you're not used to doing this yet, what you can do is pick a really far off point, somewhere that's maybe near the horizon line or again just a little above the horizon line, but then pick a really far away point. I'm looking off at some pine trees right now, and I'm gonna try to focus on a needle on a tree that's really far away here. So I'm picking that distant point, and that's going to put me pretty much into that soft eyes as well when I look off at that distant object. And so when I look at that distant object, again, I notice that that peripheral vision is opened up quite a bit. I have a very good awareness of the earth, the ground, I have a very good awareness of the sky. I have a very good awareness of what's going on, even almost a little bit behind me to the sides here. And when we're doing our Tai Chi form, if we remain in this soft eyes, like our movement today, for example, we're going to be stepping back and turning. If I stay in soft eyes, I'm getting a constant sort of 360-degree scan of what's going on around me, as well as, and this is the other part of soft eyes, is we want to extend this to all of our senses. So I'm aware of what's happening internally. I'm aware of my contact with the ground. I can be aware of that sense of touch at my feet and that sense of proprioception, that kind of kinesthetic sense of movement in my arms, maybe feeling that air against the skin. The idea is to open up to all of those senses, not to focus on any one thing. The counterpart to soft eyes would be sometimes you may be familiar with this idea of beehive soccer. If you teach a bunch of little kids to play soccer and they're just getting started, they tend to focus on that ball, and you end up with a little hive of kids running around a soccer ball around a field. And eventually when those kids learn about soft eyes, probably not in those words, but when they learn about soft eyes, they start to spread out on the field, and so that they're aware of where the ball is, where the goal is, where the defending players are, where their teammates are that they can maybe pass to. And it just opens up a lot of possibilities. And in Tai Chi, we want to even extend that to our mind. So when you're practicing your Tai Chi, you may find sometimes that there's these thoughts running through your head. Maybe you're thinking about what you're going to do later. Maybe you're wondering about an event that happened earlier today, and did you do it the right way? Did you do the right thing? Did you say the right words? And in my experience, it's pretty difficult to shut that stuff off. But what we can do is we can step back from it and we can notice those thoughts. And rather than giving those thoughts 100% of our attention, we can kind of watch them in the background and then let them go. And maybe they'll come up again, maybe they'll come around again. There's probably going to be another thought that pops in there. And the idea is to start to watch those stream of thoughts just as if we're also aware of our feet, we're aware of our hands, we're aware of what's going on in the space around us, we're aware of our breathing, and all of those things are a part of the picture, and we're staying open to the whole picture. So, kind of a pie in the sky idea. If you're new to Tai Chi, this is probably a whole new deal. And once we start moving, you're going to be looking at your feet, you're going to be looking at your hands, you're going to be thinking, am I doing this right? Again, this is a practice. Tai Chi is a practice. So when you find yourself doing that, notice that you're doing it. That's part of the picture, right? I notice myself thinking about my hand. And when you do notice that too, in your mind's eye, kind of take a step back and again, go back to your breath. Go back to your center, your lower dantian. Go back to your groundedness. Go back to that horizon line. Open up that sensory field to try to take it all in and spend as much of the practice as you can taking it all in. And when you notice, again, you've kind of hyper focused on something, again, just gently remind yourself to step back again and open up. So one little test, I'm going to do one last thing with this idea of soft eyes. One little test just to see physically, visually, if you're in soft eyes. This is kind of a neat little party trick you can do. If you look off above that horizon line or find that distant pine needle, what I'm going to have you do then is take your 2 index fingers and bring those right into the center of your field of vision. Now, the trick here is to keep looking at that distant point. If you do that, you will find a 3rd finger appearing there. If you move, you can see me moving in and out because it's getting smaller and bigger. It's like this little cocktail wiener, right? That's kind of floating in space there. It's a little optical illusion that you get. But if you have that optical illusion, you are in soft eyes. That's a great test. Just again as a test, notice if you look at your fingers, that little sausage goes away. Right? If you look through your fingers off to that horizon line or above that horizon line, then that little cocktail wiener should reappear. So just a little test to try. And with that, we'll get on to our movements for today. So I'm going to show you our repulse monkey movement here. And our repulse monkey movement, again, as I mentioned, we're going to have this kind of 360-degree scan that we're doing. I want you to see the movement before you try it. And when we go into this movement from our playing the pipa position, so I'm going to be weighted in my right leg. I'm going to have an empty step with that left heel. And I'm going to keep that weight in the right here as I start to turn to the right. I'm turning those palms up. And I step back with that left foot first, pressing forward with that right palm, coming back with the left hand, and turning those palms up again. Moving through, stepping in that with that right foot now. This is going to be 6 steps that I'm taking. And there's number 3. And especially if you're on uneven ground, this might get a little unsteady. So one thing you can do if you're starting to feel a little unbalanced, like I did a little almost stumble there, you can slide that foot when you take that step. That's number 4. And you can slide that foot. Now, if you're feeling like you're pretty well balanced and you're on good solid ground, and you want to exaggerate that step a little bit, pick that foot up, step back. Now, on the 6th step here, I'm turning that right foot out, and I'm going to come up and collect and hold the ball. I'll let those arms come down to the sides. A couple things about this stepping. Again, when you're outside, I love doing this outside because you can actually see I'm on some uneven ground here. I have to kind of adapt as I go, and that's going to make me work a little harder at it. If you're new to this and you need something a little more steady, get yourself on a little more solid ground and start there. But as I'm moving backward, one thing is going to help with that balance. Two things are going to help with that balance, actually. And one of those is that if I keep some width to my stepping, if I keep some width, so I'm working on keeping almost a hip width here to my step, almost as if you're walking backwards on like two rails of a railroad track. And that's as opposed to walking backward, which we often just kind of naturally do, is we end up, when we take a step back, narrowing that step out as if we're walking on a balance beam. Or even worse, sometimes we almost cross that leg over the other, and it really adds some instability to that stepping. So that's something you want to think about as you move back. The other thing is the size of that step. As you get better at this, you're going to start to maybe take larger steps. But in the beginning, you want to step with a fairly small step, again, so you can get those nice smooth weight transfers, really filling one leg, emptying the other, filling one leg, emptying the other, and being able to really gradually make that weight shift, being able to really feel the ground underneath your feet. And so keep that in mind as you move back. The other thing that will happen, I'll show you from the side here, from profile, when you take a step backward, it is very easy to end up either arching your back or pitching forward to do that, right? And so especially if I'm trying to take a big step, I might be likely to make that happen. Remember, one of our guidelines in Tai Chi is we want to have that imaginary cord at the crown of the head, that imaginary weight at the tailbone, and no exception here. We want to maintain that as we're stepping backward, keeping that nice vertical spine while we move. And then notice with that vertical line, then it creates almost this pivot point that we can rotate around while that vertical line stays nice and straight and we step backwards. So let's try it together. I'm going to come at you at the camera this time so that so you'll see me coming backward, but that's so we can match direction here. So I'll show you that initial point from the side. This is our playing the pipa. And so I've got that empty step with that left heel. I'm playing the pipa. I'm going to turn to the right. And here's where those palms turn up. And I'm going to step backward. That's step number one. Now I'm straightening that right foot out. It was in a little bit of a turnout for that playing the pipa movement. So now, keeping those feet essentially parallel as I step backward. And there's number three. And there's number four. Five. And you're not going to be able to see my foot here, but I'm going to turn that right foot out as I take this step number 6 so that I can come up and hold the ball. Okay, so I'm going to show you again. We'll walk through it again, but I'm going to face you so you can see this from the front. With the arms, notice that because of this turn of my hips, this makes this look like quite a large movement. Like I've got one arm straight out in front of me and one arm straight out behind me, but I'm not reaching back like this, right? Because of that turn of the hips, if I unwind the hips here, those arms are really just out to my sides. And of course, if you have neck or shoulder issues, you can modify this. Drop those arms a little bit, make this a smaller movement. You could even go on an angle, out on an angle, more in front of your shoulders. Would be a great modification for that. That's going to be a little easier on your shoulders. So make this movement yours as you do it. The other thing is with those hands. So once I get confident with those steps first, you could even just put your hands on your hips and practice that backward walking. But once you're feeling a little pretty solid with that base, what you can add to this, or what you can start to think about with the hands, is we almost want to imagine like you're swimming through taffy here, right? As I come through, there's this push, and it's almost like I'm scraping chewed gum or something kind of sticky and stretchy out of that hand. So I'm pushing forward in those hands. There's still this kind of energetic connection between those hands as I press back and I turn around, and I'm going to take that again and then scrape it out of the other hand, and then turn it again and scrape it out of that hand. So just a few images to play with. Don't try to do all of them at once necessarily. If you are finding one is really helpful right now, focus on that for a while, get that solid, and then move on to the next image to play with. So here we go. From playing the pipa, I'm going to turn to the right. I'm going to step backward and press. Step backward and press. That's 2. 3, 4, 5, and on number 6 here again, I'm going to turn to the right. Now this is going to flow into our grasping the sparrow's tail. I'm going to turn around so you can see this. So I'm holding the ball on the right. I'm going to turn to the left and take a step, testing with that heel, and then shifting that weight to the left. This is like our parting the horse's mane movement, essentially. This time, I'm going to let that back hand drift up. This is where I grasp that sparrow's tail. And just like a sparrow's tail, I want to hold it firmly, but if I pull too hard, it's going to pull those tail feathers right out. So we're using just the right amount of effort. That back hand's going to loop. That flat hand is going to come toward my left wrist, where I'm going to push, not quite touching here, almost like I'm trapping a butterfly between the hands. Again, another nice image to use just the right amount of effort. I come back, I'm going to push with 2 hands, and I'm going to turn to the right. Notice me pivoting that left foot. I'm going to hold the ball on the left, turning to the right. This is grasping the sparrow's tail to the right. That backhand drifts up. I draw that in. My toes stay on the ground as I shift into that left leg. I'm going to push at the wrist, separate the hands, and this time those toes lift off of the ground as I shift into that left leg. So it's this whole series of left-right shifts here, continuing that series of pouring that weight into the left, coming back into the right, where I'm going to hold the ball and I'll be ready for my next movement. All right, so I'm going to show you that facing away from you so we can match directions now that you've seen it from the front and seen what my hands are doing, what my feet are doing, and we can all match the direction now. So from that position where I'm holding the ball on the right, I'm going to turn to the left, take a step to grasp the sparrow's tail. Those toes stay down. So I draw that in, that backhand loops, and I push at the wrist, separating the hands. Toes lift up. I'm going to push with both hands, and that's what the hips and legs are driving that. Coming around, pivoting that left foot, so when I gather that ball on the left, my toes are straight ahead, stepping to the right. Now here's where once you get a little practiced at this, I'm looking out above that horizon line. It's scanning out above that horizon line. So I'm in those soft eyes as that hand loops around and I push at the wrist, separate the hands, and press. And coming around, and I'll hold the ball on the right. And then I'm going to drop those hands. So, okay, so I'm giving you a little different view now so that you can see the whole thing and how it all flows together. So starting with my weight in my right leg, I'm going to take that empty step with the left heel. That's my playing the pipa. Flowing into repulse monkey 6 times. Gathering up the ball, stepping to the left to grasp the sparrow's tail. Holding the ball on the left to step to the right to grasp the sparrow's tail. And I'll sink those arms. You always want to end with some sort of sinking movement, some return. After doing some form work like this, it's great to just run through a couple of rounds of the form. Again, if you're new to this, you might even just kind of make up some movements in the sections that you're not as familiar with or comfortable with. And then, you know, as you work through your way through all these detailed breakdowns, then you can add a little more detail into those movements as you go. Thank you for watching today.